Olá, boa tarde. Eu sou a Mariana Bofarini, vice-coordenadora da Cátedra de Estudos Irlandeses William Butler Yeats, da Faculdade de Filosofia, Letras e Ciências Humanas da Universidade de São Paulo. Hoje estamos aqui reunidos para a segunda sessão da série Poesia ao Meio Dia deste ano de 2025. A série foi criada em 2021 pela coordenadora da cátedra, a professora Laura Zarra, e por Susan Roy, que muitos de vocês já conhecem, então eu vou dispensar as apresentações. Ela já foi apresentada no primeiro episódio deste ano e ela está sempre com a gente, então é um prazer tê-la novamente este mês. E este mês de fevereiro é um mês especial, que é o mês em que se celebra o Valentine's Day, né, o Dia dos Namorados, no dia 14 de fevereiro, e os poemas que a Susan nos traz hoje tratam de amor, e é muito importante pensar no amor em todos os níveis da nossa vida. Então, Susan, muito obrigada pela sua seleção de hoje. So, without further ado, I will give the floor to Priscila, who is part of the chair team, along with Victor Augusto Pacheco. And yes, so hope to see you all next month, and let's all enjoy.
Thank you, Mariana. Good afternoon, and welcome to Poesia ao Meio Dia, organized by the WBH Chair of Irish Studies. My name is Priscilla, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today, whether you're joining live or watching later. Rapidamente, antes de darmos início, temos um rápido convite a fazer. A partir do dia 18 de março, teremos uma semana cheia de atividades para a abertura das atividades da cátedra. Então, não deixem de conferir nossa programação no site, que vai estar na descrição aqui do vídeo. Now back to English. As usual, the session will be hosted by Susan, who will guide us through a wonderful selection of poems. So let's bring Susan here. Susan, hello. Thank you so much for once again leading your session, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. I'm very happy to be here with you all as usual. As Mariana was saying there in the introduction, today's selection is based on a selection of love poems. Here in Ireland, we celebrated Valentine's Day on the 14th of February, which is the day that it's celebrated in many countries around the world. But it's particularly significant in Ireland because it's quite ingrained in our culture and tradition. And most people celebrate it with great joy and enthusiasm. But the celebration of St. Valentine's in Ireland has had a long history, dating right back to the Middle Ages. Of course, it was believed that the birds began to mate on February the 14th. But it was also thought that this was the day when St. Valentine performed miracles and secret marriages. The first actual recorded celebration of St. Valentine's Day took place in the 17th century in Ireland, when a group of young Irish men and women exchanged love notes and small gifts as a way of expressing their affection for one another. But this tradition actually continued to grow in popularity over the centuries. And by the 19th century, it had become a widespread celebration all over Ireland. The interesting thing about St. Valentine, though, was that he was an Italian saint, although there are many different Valentines, but one of the Valentines was an Italian saint. When he died, his remains were buried in the catacombs of San Valentino in Rome. But in 1835, a popular Irish Carmelite monk travelled to Rome. His name was actually John Spratt. He travelled to Rome, and he received tokens of esteem from Pope Gregory, and he's said to have gifted the remains of Saint Valentine to this Carmelite monk. And so on November the 10th in 1836, The reliquary containing the remains arrived in Dublin, and there was a solemn procession to Whitefriar Street Church, where these remains were received by Archbishop Murray of Dublin. And then during a renovation of the church in the 1950s, they were highlighted again with a whole altar and a shrine being constructed to house them. And so the tradition began in Ireland that on St. Valentine's Day, couples began to gather at this church to have their wedding rings blessed at the site of the saint's relics, and many people praying to have their loved ones watched over. So there is that particular bind with St. Valentine and with the Whitefriar Church in Dublin during this particular day. Anyway, so my first poem is a poem called Ephemera by William Butler Yeats. I really only came across this poem recently, but I was struck by the sadness and the resignation that runs through it. And of course, love is also about heartbreak and about the end of love. And I think Yeats captures this couple and the end of their love and the resignation and sadness that comes with that. And we kind of overhear their final conversation and their agreement that their love is waning. So let's start off with that one then, called Ephemera by W.B. Yeats. Your eyes that once were never weary of mine are bowed in sorrow under pendulous lids, because our love is waning. And then she. Although our love is waning, let us stand by the lone border of the lake once more, together in that hour of gentleness when the poor, tired child's passion falls asleep. How far away the stars seem, and how far is our first kiss, and how old my heart. Pensive, they paced along the faded leaves, while slowly he whose hand held hers replied, passion has often worn our wandering hearts. The woods around them and the yellow leaves fell like faint meteors in the gloom. And once a rabbit, old and lame, limped down the path. Autumn was over him, and now they stood on the lone border of the lake once more. Turning, he saw that she had thrust dead leaves gathered in silence, dewy as her eyes in bosom and hair. Do not mourn, he said, that we are tired, for other loves await us. Hate on and love through unripening hours. Before us lies eternity, and our souls are love, and a continual farewell. The next poem I've chosen for you is called The Planter's Daughter. And it's concerned with the relationship between the native Irish tenantry in Ireland and the English and Scottish planters who arrived in Ireland during the 16th and 17th centuries. These were people who came over from England and Scotland and bought up huge tracts of land at very cheap prices, and the Irish became tenants on that land. The central feature of this poem is about the poet's obvious admiration for the planter's daughter. And she represents a sort of traditional Celtic idea of female beauty. Again, going back into our Irish tradition, she is the spare van, or the fairy-like woman, the banshee, the ashling, and all the other heroines of Celtic literature. Of course, like, there's sort of an air of unreality about her. She's kind of like this supernatural person that the poet describes. Her beauty is so fantastic that it's almost unreal. However, The Planter's Daughter is a poem much loved by Irish people, and it's written by Austin Clarke. When night stirred at sea and the fire brought a crowd in, they say her beauty was music in mouth, and few in the candlelit thought her too proud, for the house of the planter is known by the trees. Men had seen her and drank deep and were silent. The women were speaking wherever she went, as a bell that is rung or a wonder told shyly. And oh, she was the Sunday in every week. It's a beautiful ending. The Sunday, the special day celebrated by Irish people at that time, made her so different, stands out from the rest of the ordinariness of people's lives. It's a wonderful line to end with. So the next poem that I'm going to read for you is a poem called, it's just simply called Note by Leanne O'Sullivan. It's the final poem in her collection, which is called A Quarter of an Hour. And I just love the line, I have singled you out from the whole world. It just sort of brings to life that notion of the good fortune we have to meet the one person in this huge universe of ours. But in this particular poem, it's even more affecting when we realize that it's about the poet's husband, who had a long and terrible illness which caused him to fall into a coma and lose his memory. And so I suppose it kind of fills us with a sense of the expansive possibility of life and the place within it of those whom we're lucky to love. Note by Leanne O'Sullivan. If we become separated from each other this evening, try to remember the last time you saw me and go back and wait for me there. I promise I won't be very long, though I am haunted by the feeling that I might keep missing you, with the noise of the city growing too loud and the day burning out so quickly. But let's just say it's as good a plan as any. Just once, let's imagine a word for the memory that lives beyond the body, that circles and sets things all right. For I have singled you out from the whole world, and I would, even as this darkness is falling, even when the night comes where there are no more words, and the day comes when there is no more light. So here in Ireland, it's now 10 years since the Marriage Equality Act was passed by popular vote, and 10 years also since the Gender Recognition Act, and again at the same time, the Children and Family Relationships Act was passed. So 2025 sees celebration of a huge turning point in Ireland with regard to our attitudes towards same-sex marriage, gender equality. And so in order to celebrate this anniversary, I'd like to read to you a wonderful poem by Rosamund Taylor called Pride 2017. Summer solstice, we lie without covers, room scented by buddleia, our new rings gleam. This is old as kissing, two bodies of the same kind loving one another. We are new because promises we made bind us in law as well as love. At the close of the Soviet Union, where we were born, you on the Polish border, I by Scotsman's Bay. We didn't know it was the right time. Strangers already marched for us. In bitter years of boys' hands up our shirts, our names on bus stops and walls, we didn't know our luck, that we would find this moment when we sleep safe, this shortest night, and wake to a rainstorm, frogs leaping in yarrow, and ladies' bedstraw. I love the next poem I'm going to read for you, simply because it's by Paul Durcan, one of my great favourites. And he also talks about the kind of love that's rarely documented in literature. It's that comfortable love between middle-aged married man and woman. It's typical of Durcan. It's a snapshot of everyday moments. It kind of captures the scraping away of the banal to reveal its beauty. I particularly love the line, I'll drive halfway, you drive halfway. It's on a journey to Dublin, which is quite a short journey, but like that would be typical conversation between two people in Ireland, although the distances are minute in comparison to Brazil. But it's a lovely poem. It's called The Man with a Bit of Jizz in Him by Paul Durcan. My husband is a man with a bit of jizz in him. On Monday night in Sligo, I said to him, let's go someplace for a week before the winter is on top of us. He said, where would you like to go? I said, down south, West Cork or Kerry. He said, too much hassle. I said, where would you like to go? He said, Dublin Airport, early tomorrow morning. I'll drive halfway, you drive halfway. We caught the Aer Lingus Dublin-Nice direct flight, €180 return. Driving to Dublin, he phoned his niece in Herts. He said, I want a car in Nice. Hertz gave us a brand new Peugeot, only 30 miles on the clock. If you're over 45, they give you a big car. If you're a young fellow, they give you a small car that you can go and crash. There's only two ways out of Nice Airport, west or east. Simple. At the first filling station, he stopped and asked the way to Saint-Paul-de-Vence. Saint-Paul-de-Vence, exit 48, and do not come on the motorway again until you want to go back to Ireland. An hour later, I was lying on a duvet in a 3-star hotel in St. Paul de Vence. It was spotless, spotless. I was that pleased with him, I shook his hand and pulled him under the duvet with me. An attractive middle-aged housewife I may be, but there is nothing to beat a man with a bit of jizz in him. I hope you enjoyed that. A great Paul Durkin poem, I think. My next poem comes from the poet, writer and lecturer Theo Dorgan. And he once exclaimed that he cannot bring himself to trust a poet who hasn't written a love poem. And of course, by that he means a poem that values some other more than it values the self. He said, "Love chooses us blindly, according to laws nobody has yet understood, nor is it likely that anyone ever will. And so it is with poems. Just as we cannot decide to love or be loved, we cannot decide to write a poem. Better and truer to say that the poem writes us." Lovely words. So I'm going to read you his poem, On a Day Far From Now, by Theo Dorgan. Death will come and have your eyes, and I will go into her arms without fear or hesitation. Frost on the slates of our beloved square, the cars riding low under a hurrying sky, when I open the great hall door and take her hand, her long black coat. The bare flagged hallway, frost and perfume on the night air. I watch her let down her gleaming hair, open her slender arms in your exact gesture. Death will come and have your eyes, and I will go into her arms, alone and unafraid. The great poet Michael Longley once said, "The love poem is the most important thing I do. The hub of the wheel is love." Unfortunately, Michael Longley is no longer with us. His funeral was actually held on St. Bridget's Day, just this month here in Ireland. President Higgins led the tributes to Michael Longley after his death was announced, saying he'd be recognised as one of the greatest poets that Ireland has ever produced. So the poem I've chosen for you by Michael Longley is called The Linen Industry. And it's this celebration of love, intimate and playful. He thinks of the white sheets of the attic bed, reimagined as a bleach green. The processes of the North's defining industry reconfigured as the circle of life. He says, there may be little room among the machines, but there's always space for love. The Linen Industry by Michael Longley. Pulling up flax after the blue flowers have fallen, and laying our handfuls in the peaty water to rot those grasses to the bone, or building stooks that recall the skirts of an invisible dancer, we become part of the linen industry and follow its processes to the grubby town where fields are compacted into window boxes, and there is little room among the big machines. But even in our attic, under the skylight, we make love on a bleach green. The whole meadow draped with material, turning white in the sun, as though snow, reluctant to melt, were our attire. What's passion but a battering of stubborn stalks, then a gentle combing out of fibres like hair, and a weaving of those into christening robes, into garments for a marriage or a funeral. Since it's like a bereavement, once the labour's done, to find ourselves last workers in a dying trade, let flax be our matchmaker, our undertaker, the provider of sheets for whatever the bed, and be shy of your breasts in the presence of death. Say that you look more beautiful in linen, wearing white petticoats, the bow on your bodice, a butterfly, attending the embroidered flowers. So I couldn't possibly present a whole episode of our Poesia, Meio Dia without including the great poem, the great love poem Scaffolding by Seamus Heaney. It continues to be one of the most wonderful love poems, which is celebrated and read at many weddings here in Ireland. And I really do believe that it captures what we really need to build a marriage, and to think about when the times get rough, how that, it is possible to survive because of what we have built our love upon. So I'll read you this poem, Scaffolding by Seamus Heaney. Masons, when they start upon a building, are careful to test out the scaffolding. Make sure that planks won't slip at busy points. Secure all ladders, tighten bolted joints. And yet, all this comes down when the job's done, showing off walls of sure and solid stone. So, if, my dear, there sometimes seems to be old bridges between you and me, never fear. We may let the scaffolds fall, confident that we have built our wall. So for our last piece today, it's a beautiful song called Grace. And I've chosen this especially because the history of the song is a wonderful love story. It tells the story of Grace Gifford and Joseph Plunkett, who were married in Kilmainham jail hours before Joseph was executed by firing squad for his role in the Easter Rising in 1916. Grace met her future husband through her brother-in-law, Thomas MacDonagh, another future martyr for Irish freedom. And Thomas was married to her sister Muriel. So Joseph proposed to Grace in 1915, and the pair planned a double wedding with his sister and her fiancé. And the wedding date was set for Easter Sunday, 1916. But instead, the uprising took place. That failed uprising, which is now known as the Easter Uprising of 1916. And during that time, Joseph was captured, imprisoned in Dublin's Kilmainham jail, along with the other leaders, including Thomas MacDonagh. And hearing that her fiancé was to be executed by firing squad at dawn, Grace bought a ring from a Dublin jeweller, and she pleaded with the military authorities to allow their wedding to take place. And as you'll hear in the famous song, Grace and Joseph were married on the grounds of the prison, hours before Joseph Plunkett was executed in his role for his role in the Easter Rising. And this wonderful version of the song was actually recorded in that very jail. And I think it's a wonderful song, an evocation of pure love. Grace went on and lived her life. She never remarried, and died later on, and was buried by her husband in Glasnevin Cemetery in Dublin. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed the love poems that I've brought to you today. And I'm going to go back to Priscilla and ask her to share this wonderful song with you. Thank you very much. Until I see you again, stay well, and I hope that everybody watching has lots of love and in their lives. Okay, thank you.
As we gather in the chapel here in old Kilmainham jail, I think about these last few weeks. Or will they say we failed? From our school days they have told us we must yearn for liberty. Yet all I want in this dark place is to have you here with me. Oh, Grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love, I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, so we must say goodbye.
Now I know it's hard for you, my love, to ever understand the love I bear for these brave men, my love for this brave land. But when Porrick called me to his side down in the GPO, I had to leave my own sick bed. To him I had to go.
Oh, Grace, just hold me in your arms and let this moment linger. They take me out at dawn and I will die. With all my love I place this wedding ring upon your finger. There won't be time to share our love, so we must say goodbye. There won't be time to share our love, so we must say goodbye.
Wasn't it a full life?